Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjam Bihari Jaya Radha Kunjam Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjam Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjam Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Jana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Jai Mr. Pad, Paramahamsa, Bhagavad-Gita, Ashtottara Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad, Paramahamsa, Bhagavad-Gita, Ashtottara Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Welcome. Welcome. I don't remember you. This is your first class you've been coming to? Gita classes? Not Gita. Really? My Gita classes? Well, it just shows how senile I am. I don't remember you being here, but welcome. Oh, you said, oh, that's why. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this first day of July 2026 in San Diego, we're reading Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are on the last verse of chapter 3, known as Karma Yoga, on page 179, text 43. You don't want to open the book? Page 179. Okay. Evam buddhe padam buddha sangstabhyatmanam atmana jahi shatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. Evam buddhe param buddha sangstabhyatmanam atmana jahi shatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. Evam buddhe param buddha sangstabhyatmanam atmana jahi shatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. Evam buddhe param buddha sangstabhyatmanam atmana jahi shatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. Go ahead, Jeff. Evam buddhe param buddha sangstabhyatmanam atmana jahi shatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. Go ahead, Luis. Evam buddhe param buddha sangstabhyatmanam atmana jahi shatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. Right. Evam buddhe param buddha sangstabhyatmanam atmana jahi shatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. Ami. Evam buddhe param buddha sangstabhyatmanam atmana jahi shatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. Evam buddhe param buddha sangstabhyatmanam sangstabhyatmanam. Evam buddhe param buddha sangstabhyatmanam atmana jahi shatrum mahabaho kamarupam duratana. Go ahead. Evam buddhe param buddha sangstabhyatmanam atmana jahi shatrum mahabaho kamarupam durasadam. Anyone online?
Hare Krishna, it's me, Vanessa.
I know. Go ahead, Vanessa.
Okay. Evam buddhe param buddha
Evam buddhe param buddha
samstabhyatmanam atmana
sangstabhyatmanam atmana
jahi shatrum mahabaho
jahi shatrum mahabaho
kamarupam durasadam.
kamarupam durasadam. Chaitanya Lila, you there?
Evam buddhe param buddha
Evam buddhe param buddha
samstabhyatmanam atmana
sangstabhyatmanam atmana
Jahi Shatram Mahabaho.
Jahi Shatram Mahabaho.
Kama Rupam Darasadam.
Kamarupam Durasadam. Anyone else? Okay.
That's it. Hare Krishna.
Haribol. Evam, thus, buddhehi, to intelligence, param, superior, buddha, knowing, sangstabhya, by steadying, atmanam, the mind, atmana, by deliberate intelligence, jahi, conquer, shatrum, the enemy, mahabaho, or mighty armed one, kamarupam, in the form of lust, durasadam, formidable. Or do you want to say formidable? Which one do you like? All right, formidable. Translation. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence, Almighty Armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus, by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. Purport. This third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is conclusively directive to Krishna consciousness by knowing oneself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead without considering impersonal voidness, the ultimate end. In the material existence of life, one is certainly influenced by propensities for lust and desire for dominating the resources of material nature. Desire for overlording and for sense gratification is the greatest enemy of the conditioned soul. But by the strength of Krishna consciousness, one can control the material senses, the mind, and the intelligence. One may not give up work and prescribed duties all of a sudden, but by gradually developing Krishna consciousness, one can be situated in a transcendental position without being influenced by the material senses and the mind, by steady intelligence directed toward one's pure identity. This is the sum total of this chapter. In the immature stage of material existence, philosophical speculations and artificial attempts to control the senses by the so-called practice of yogic postures can never help a man towards spiritual life. He must be trained in Krishna consciousness by higher intelligence. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the third chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of karma yoga, or the discharge of one's prescribed duty in Krishna consciousness. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara. So, the basic lesson of this chapter is that one has to hear the transcendental instruction of Krishna, either directly, Bhagavad Gita, or through the medium of a realized soul, such as Srila Prabhupada. I guess the best situation is we're hearing both. We have Krishna's direct words and we have Srila Prabhupada's explanation of it. What for? In order to strengthen the intelligence, to purify the intelligence. Because as we see from this verse, and this will come up again, the key distinguishing factor of human beings, as opposed to all the 399,999 other species, is that, the other 8 million species, sorry, is that we have superior intelligence to the animals, the insects, the birds, everything else. We have an intelligence that can become purified and strengthened by exposure to this philosophy, by knowledge, in other words, transcendental knowledge. And by that transcendental knowledge received from the proper source, if we accept it, this receptivity is everything. This word, right in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the second verse, Dharma projitakaita vota patamone matsaranam satam vejam vastavamatta vastu shivadam tapatrayon bulanam Shriman Bhagavate Mahamanikote King Vaparayishwara Sajjo Rijjavarudjate Tukadabi Shushubi Stakshana. It was that last word that Shushubi. This is a word that comes up again and again in the Bhagavatam, and it means Prabhupada would translate it in different ways. Probably the most common way is this submissive all reception, or ardent hearing. Ardent hearing, not just in one ear and out the other, but in one ear and it takes root in your heart. In other words, you're open to hearing the transcendental message, and you're not trying to figure out how it's wrong. In other words, you're not thinking, well, I don't know, that doesn't square with the philosophy I read yesterday from Immanuel Kant. No, you have to be open to hearing. You have to come. I don't want to say naked, but you have to leave all your misconceptions and your preconceptions at the door, so to speak, and be ready to receive the message submissively. And in that mood, then the intelligence becomes purified and strengthened, because as very nicely expressed in this verse, that knowing that the intelligence is superior to the mind. And it doesn't say it here, but it's clear in the previous verse, that the mind is superior to the senses, you see? So the intelligence is meant to be strengthened to control the mind and control the senses. The mind, we have so many things we may have been exposed to, we want to do. We have the impulse to go here, do this, do that. But understanding from a good association, from hearing, that no, every moment of our life is valuable. This is a basic principle that Rupa Goswami gives in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, of Avyarta Kalatvam, not wasting time. Getting entangled in all the complications of material life through attachments and all kinds of crazy ideas is a deviation, or is a tragic waste of a human life. This verse, I'll give it to you again. You probably heard it before, but it's worth repeating. Is that labdva sudurlamamidam bahusambhavante manusham artadama nityam apihadira. So labdva means you have attained, O human being. Sudurlabam, very difficult or rare to attain. After many, many births coming through, you may have come through so many species, so many births. But now, sudurlabamidam bahusambhavante, many, many births, manusham. Exactly the same word, human, man. Manusham. And what is the critical difference? Artadam. He doesn't wait any words. Artadam means you can achieve the ultimate goal, the valuable thing. Arta is a word that means something of value. Often it means money, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. But ultimately, we don't want to just know any arta, but we want to know svarta. Sva-arta. Sva refers to one's own, meaning what the soul's real goal is, what your goal is. And these material goals that you become distracted to, that's called the entanglement of material life. And you may very well, especially in this age, you may very well lose the human form, go down in the species, and waste more time. So, manusham artadam anityam apihadira. But like all other forms of life, it's temporary. Anityam. Nityam means eternal. Anityam means not eternal, temporary. So one has to be dhira. This is a very key word. It appears several times in the second chapter. Dhira means sober-minded, self-controlled, not just going with whatever happens to attract your senses or what comes up in the mind like that. Very kind of self-controlled. So that someone's consider really the significance of the human form of life. And then having understood it, then the next line comes in. Turnam means immediately, without wasting time. Yateta, strive. Turnam yateta napateta namritya yavat. As long as your body hasn't died yet, anumritya yavat. Anumritya means that death is always over your shoulder. It can come at any time, so we have no time to waste. Yavat means as long as. Strive for what? Then the last line comes in. Nikshayasa. So, the Shreyas and Prayas. This is one of these wonderful pairs to know that you're part of. Shreyas is ultimate, the ultimate good that you want. Prayas is the immediate thing that you might want, the senses are calling for. So this is typical amongst children, animals. They don't know Shreyas and Prayas, they just know Prayas. What's to eat, where's safety, how can I get the other opposite sex, and then when I'm exhausted with all that, let me take rest. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So, but for a human being, what is the ultimate good? Can you give me a good guess, Jeffrey? Realization. Self-realization, which will take us where? Back to Godhead. Yeah, in other words, we want the immediate goal to strive for, which we share with the impersonalists in a sense, spiritualists of all kinds, is to end the painful cycle of birth, old age, disease, and death. Samsara, the samsara chakra. The Buddhists, and this is why I learned that word when I was, reading up on Buddhism. Samsara, the samsara chakra. So, but that's Shreyas. But there's Nikshreyasa, which means the ultimate good, which is not only ending the cycle of birth and death, but going back home, back to Godhead. Because you can end it, or seeming to end it, by achieving Brahman realization. This is the famous verse Prabhupada would quote from the prayers of the demigods for Krishna in the womb. Yea and yea. They're praising the devotees, the pure devotees. Then they say yea and yea, but there are others. Anya. Yea and yea are the Vindaksha, O lotus-eyed Lord. Vimuktamaninas, who may think that they're liberated, but they're not. The Muktamad, Svai Ashtabhavad, but they're averse to serving your lotus feet. Svai Ashtabhavad Avishuddha Buddhiya, because their intelligence, Buddhiya, the same word is in this verse twice. Their intelligence is not purified yet. So they're impersonalists. And few of them, you remember I told Aruha Kṛṣṇa, you remember I described this Kṛṣṇa? In English, we have many words that are onomatopeias. That may be as strange a word as any Sanskrit word here. Onomatopoeia is a word that means what it sounds like. Splash, boom, sprinkle, like that. So Kṛṣṇa, doesn't it call to mind difficult austerities? I mean, that's not those are smooth words. That's describing Krishna's pure dancing, But this is Kṛṣṇa. This is sitting, All right, I got to practice austerity to separate my consciousness from this material body. So it's wintertime. All right, let's find a big snow bank and sit in the snow and meditate, And if it's huh? Meditate on Brahman, the absolute white light. Formless. That's what he's talking about. Kṛṣṇa param param. So param padam means you transcend the ordinary realm and you're in the white light, So they think by a few, not many, to practice of severe austerity to control the lower urges, but you don't have a way of engaging your senses in Krishna service, so you're just suppressing. Suppressing. That's why it's Kṛṣṇa. Param padam tatat patanjado. But they fall down from there eventually, because param padam patanjado anadvita yushmarangaya, because they're averse to serving your lotus feet. You see, this is the fallacy. So we know that the desire to get out of birth, old age, disease, and death is a preliminary motive to get us serious, because that we can understand is miserable. We don't have too much direct experience of the positive bliss of Krishna consciousness yet. So that's why Krishna says in the 13th chapter, when he lists those elements of knowledge, beginning with humility, because we have to approach the spiritual path with receptivity and humility. Amanitvam, adambitvam. Adambitvam means no hypocrisy, no cheating. Adambit ahimsa, non-violence. He goes through, and then he comes to the point that janma, mrityu, jara, vyadi, dukkha, dosha, darshanam. To always keep in one's mind the evils of birth, old age, disease, and death. So it should serve as kind of a deterrent from us allowing our mind to wander, to thoughts of sense gratification, knowing that could give us another birth, prolong our life in the material world. Because it will plant a desire in us, and then that desire will bring us back. So Krishna says, okay, that means that liberation is a worthy goal at first. But ultimately, we don't want to stay there. Just like Lordji says, nadanam nadinam nasundanim. In the Shikshastika, it's so wonderful, because it's instruction. And that is, some part of that instruction is teaching us how to pray, what to pray for, right? So the first part of this verse of text 4 in the Shikshastika, what not to pray for, nadanam. You know, no, we don't want to go to Indoloka to live very opulently. No wealth. Dana means wealth. Nadanang najanam, followers. Okay, let me be a big leader, you know. No, you know what? I want to be a material follower. Sundarim, you know, is a beautiful mate. Kavitang, great education. Jagadisha, Lord of the universe. I'm not praying for any of these things. And then by implication, he says, Mama Janmani Janmani Ishvare. Oh Lord, birth after birth means I'm not, before he even says what he wants, I'm not praying for liberation, because that means no birth after birth. So he said, Mama Janmani Janmani Ishvare, Bhavatad Bhakti Ahoituki Twahi. Let me have unalloyed, pure devotion unto you, even if I have to stay in the material world, as long as I can engage in your service. You know, I mean, pure service, I don't mind. So that means you're not trying to, you know, get liberation for self, which Prahlad calls mukta kama. Mukta kama. He says, Prayena deva muniyo svavamukti kama. For the most part, the munis, the wise souls in this world, they're after their own liberation. They couldn't care less about everyone else, you know, who's not liberated. I want to go to Brahman, you know. And to that end, they go to in solitary places. They wander in the Himalaya hills or somewhere away from people. Maunam charandi vijane, where there's no people. Napararta nishta, very important phrase, because it's exactly the opposite of what Prahlad is and what all the sincere followers of Lord Chaitanya are. Napararta nishta means, there's the word arta again. Not at all determined to give others, the ignorant masses, Krishna consciousness. Napararta nishta. They have no empathy. Sympathy. But what is that nice phrase? This is one of the ones we should really know, that devotees have, real sincere devotees. Paradukkha dukkhi. Paradukkha dukkhi means you're feeling pain from seeing all the pain of these conditioned souls. Now that pain, you know, impels you to try to give them Krishna consciousness, so that they can experience some of what you're beginning to experience, which is freedom from the anxieties of the material world and Krishna consciousness. And ultimately, this is what's most pleasing to Krishna. He says right in the 18th chapter. Those who are teaching this science to the people in general are most dear to me, who are giving this, you know. So anyway, the point is that the intelligence is emphasized here. Atma has two meanings. One is the mind, and the other one is the Atmanam Atmana, what is it? The mind, and by deliberate intelligence. So Atma can be mind, it can be intelligence, it can be the soul, it can even be the body. So this is the summing up, he's summing up the whole chapter here. And that is that, okay, what are we going to do? Because the whole thing is karma yoga. Everything boils down, well, what am I going to do with the senses that I have, with the mind, the intelligence? So the default of the conditioned soul is, well, I'm going to use them all for sense gratification. But that's going to just prolong your misery in the material world. So under good instruction, inspired by the words of Krishna and the words of Krishna's representative, we want to discipline our senses and mind through deliberate intelligence. And that's why I always like to come back to this one verse. You may forgive me, you haven't heard it probably in a while. This is a verse Prabhupada would often quote, and is spoken by Lord Chaitanya to Sanatana Goswami in the Madhya Lila when he's instructed. It begins with the word kama, which is what it's all about. Kama dinang, kama, etc. Kama, krodha, lobha, you know. Kama leads to anger. That's we read that in the last chapter. Because your material desires are ultimately going to be frustrated by one thing or another. And you get disappointed, you become angry, then maybe you'll turn that anger on yourself, you become depressed, you know, whatever. You know, in other words, it's kama, krodha, lobha, greed. So all of these things, kama adinam, kama, etc. Kama adinam katinda katita palita durni deshas tesham jata mayana karuna natrapano pashantihi utsvijaitam hatiyodapate sampatam labda buddhis. Do you recognize it? She knows. So I put it into a poem. And how many ways have I sought to obey the seductive demands of my wicked desires? They've shown me no mercy, yet on I have gone shamelessly trying to quench lust's unquenchable fires. But now I'm rejecting these hellish desires, for my higher intelligence now has awoken. O Krishna, O shelter of fearlessness, please let me serve you with faith that will never be broken. Yeah, and that's so that this question came up. Well, how can we advance? We're involved in so many things in the world. So I brought up, I think this was a few days ago, the importance of prayer, because prayer is essential. We're supposed to chant this Hare Krishna mantra prayerfully. Prabhupada was what does it mean? It's a prayer to Radha and Krishna. Please engage me in your service. So we should really be feeling that we're calling out in helplessness, please, purify me, save me from entanglement here, enlighten me, And the fact is that if we do chant sincerely and we chant with great attention, we will get the higher taste of Krishna consciousness. We will begin to be able to taste it, because Krishna is non-different from his name. Nama Chintamani Krishnas Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purnak Shraddho Nityamukto Abhinatva Nama Namino. So the holy name is like a Chintamani gem. Chintamani gem is in the spiritual world, this famous prayer, Chintamani Pakada Sadmasakopa. And Prabhupada would always call it what would he say? A touchstone. Touchstone, he gave a new meaning to the word touchstone. Touchstone, if you look it up in the dictionary, it means a stone that the goldsmith will use to test whether a coin is really gold or not. Rub it on it. But touchstone is a philosopher's stone. Probably means that you touch it to something or something to it, and the thing will transform to gold, become gold. It's the magic stone. So the mind, if you're chanting, so this is Nama Chintamani Krishna. So the holy name is like a Chintamani gem. If you receive it in your mind, you're chanting sincerely and you're hearing very carefully, it will transform your consciousness from material to spiritual, because Krishna is full of all potencies. And we simply think of him somehow. But in this age, the best way, most efficient way, is through chanting of his holy name. And even he says, I marked this, in the 10th chapter, he says, I am this, I am that, Mrityu Sarvaharas Chaham. He's, giving, and one of the things he says, Yagyanam Japa Yagyosmi. Of all Jagyas, I am the Japa, chanting. And we know, of course, that to worship Lord Chaitanya, what's the best way? Nama Sankirtan, Jagya, Sankirtan Jagya. Huh? Yes, exactly. But in the Gita, Krishna says, "I'm the Japa Yogi." But but he comes as Lord Chaitanya. He teaches the Sankirtan Yoga primarily, but he also chanted Japa. The point is to chant the holy name with enthusiasm, with regularity, the vows, and to really relish the change that takes place in your consciousness. And the most obvious thing that happens is that things that you were interested in, that you were hankering for, those things, that fire goes down. And you become more and more attracted to serve Krishna, to find out about Krishna, hear about Krishna, glorify Krishna. That's the higher taste. And that's what we want to cultivate to the point where we don't want any lower taste. We just want Krishna. And that's our ticket back home, back to Godhead. Okay, so that's the end of that chapter. Should I go on to chapter 4? Why not? Okay, Transcendental Knowledge, page 181. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Imam Vivassate Yogam Proktavan Hamavyayam Vivasvamana Vepraha Manurikshvakave Bravit. The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivasvan, and Vivasvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind. And Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. So before I go on here, just to point out, because this verse obviously follows the previous verse, and the previous talks about Almighty Arjuna, you should steady the mind by its deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and then by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. So that is the yoga that he's talking about here. This science of yoga, how to steady the mind, and to control the lower self by the higher self, and in this way attain Krishna consciousness. Purport. Herein we find the history of the Bhagavad Gita, traced from a remote time when it was delivered to the royal order of all planets, beginning from the sun planet. The kings of all planets are especially meant for the protection of the inhabitants, and therefore the royal order should understand the science of the Bhagavad Gita in order to be able to rule the citizens and protect them from material bondage to lust. Human life is meant for cultivation of spiritual knowledge in eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the executive heads of all states and all planets are obliged to impart this lesson to the citizens by education, culture, and devotion. In other words, the executive heads of all states are intended to spread the science of Krishna consciousness so that the people may take advantage of this great science and pursue a successful path, utilizing the opportunity of the human form of life. In this millennium, the sun god is known as Vivasvan, the king of the sun, which is the origin of all planets within the solar system. In the Brahma Samhita 552, it is stated, okay, anyway, this word solar system, Prabhupada didn't use. Yeah, but I'm sorry? No, Ikshvaku is a human being. He heard that from Vivasvan, the Manu, Vaivasvata Manu. Yes.
Sun god is another name is Vivasvan. And then from Vivasvan it has been instructed to...
Well, Vivasvan Manave, Maha said, Manave, unto the father of mankind. So Vivasvan spoke it to Vaivasvata Manu. Yes, but that's Vaivasvata Manu. That's not the same as Vivasvan.
Yeah, no, Vaivasvan Antara means...
I'm telling you, I'm looking at the word by word meanings. Manave, unto the father of mankind, of the name Vaivasvata Manu.
Vaivasvata means there are certain number of kalpa. Certain number of kalpa transfer, so that particular time he is being a king there in that planetary system.
Yeah.
Then this Vaivasvata convert into another kind of yugas. Many number of yugas goes, and then the name changes from Vaivasvan to another name. So
Oh yeah, it looks like you're right. The father of mankind is Ikshvaku. He's known Manu.
yeah, Manu is our basic. When this human creation was, there was Manu, but I'm not sure about Ikshvaku, so I'm asking. Ikshvaku is the first of after Manu. Ikshvaku is like his son of Manu.
Yeah. Let's read the rest of the purport. I think it may come clear here. But we'll soon find out. In this millennium, the sun god is known as Vivasvan, the king of the sun. Okay, we'll continue to read here. Which is the origin of all planets within the solar system. And I'm questioning that phrase, solar system. I don't think Prabhupada used that phrase. I'm going to look at it and say, universe. This is put in here by Hayagriva. He didn't believe that there's only one sun in the universe. Yeah, but that's our philosophy. In the Brahma Samhita 552, it is stated, I'll say, you say. This is a famous verse. Come on. Yat chakshuresa sabita sakalagrahanam Raja samasta sudamurta rashesha tejaha Yasyagya pramati sambrita kala chakro Govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Let me worship, Lord Brahma said, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, Krishna, who is the original person and under whose order the sun, which is the king of all planets, is assuming immense power and heat. The sun represents the eye of the Lord and traverses its orbit in obedience to his order. Close quote. The sun is the king of the planets, and the sun god, at present of the name Vivasvan, rules the sun planet, which is controlling all other planets by supplying heat and light. He is rotating under the order of Krishna, and Lord Krishna originally made Vivasvan his first disciple to understand the science of the Bhagavad Gita. The Gita is not, therefore, a speculative treatise for the insignificant mundane scholar, but is a standard book of knowledge coming down from time immemorial. In the Mahabharata, Shanti Parva 348, 51-52, we can trace out the history of the Gita as follows. Treta yugado chatato vivasvan manave dadao manushchaloka brityartam sutakyek vakave dado ikshvakuna chakatito vyapya lokan avastitaha. In the beginning of the millennium known as Treta Yuga, this science of the relationship with the Supreme was delivered by Vivasvan to Manu. Manu, being the father of mankind, gave it to his son Maharaj Ikshvaku, the king of this earth planet and forefather of the Raghu dynasty, in which Lord Ramchandra appeared. Therefore, the Bhagavad Gita existed in human society from the time of Maharaj Ikshvaku. Close quote. At the present moment, we have passed through 5,000 years of the Kali Yuga, which lasts 432,000 years. Before this, there was Dwapara Yuga, 800,000 years. And before that, there was Treta Yuga, 1,200,000 years. Thus, some 2,005,000 years ago, Manu spoke the Bhagavad Gita to his disciple and son Maharaj Ikshvaku, the king of this planet Earth. The age of the current Manu is calculated to last some 305,300,000 years, of which 120,400,000 have passed. Accepting that before the birth of Manu, the Gita was spoken by the Lord to his disciple, the sun god Vivasvan, a rough estimate is that the Gita was spoken at least 120,400,000 years ago, and in human society it has been extant for 2 million years. It was respoken by the Lord again to Arjuna about 5,000 years ago. This is the rough estimate of the history of the Gita, according to the Gita itself, and according to the version of the speaker, Lord Sri Krishna. It was spoken to the sun god Vivasvan because he is also a Kshatriya and is the father of all Kshatriyas who are descendants of the sun god, or the Surya Vangsha Kshatriyas. Because the Bhagavad Gita is as good as the Vedas, being spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this knowledge is apaurushaya, superhuman. Since the Vedic instructions are accepted as they are, without human interpretation, the Gita must therefore be accepted without mundane interpretation. The mundane wranglers may be accepted with, the mundane wranglers may speculate on the Gita in their own ways, but this is not the Bhagavad Gita as it is. Therefore, the Bhagavad Gita has to be accepted as it is from the disciplic succession. And it is described herein that the Lord spoke to the sun god, the sun spoke to the sun god spoke to his son Manu, and Manu spoke it to his son Ikshvaku. Yeah, it's the son of the sun god. Okay, now next verse is very well known. You have a question? No. Evam parambara praptam imam raja shayo viduhu sakale hamhata yogo nashtak parantapa. This supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost. Kalena Mahata, the powerful force of time. Purport: it is clearly stated that the Gita was especially meant for the saintly kings because they were to execute its purpose in ruling over the citizens. Certainly the Bhagavad Gita was never meant for the demoniac persons who would dissipate its value for no one's benefit and would devise all types of interpretations according to personal whims. As soon as the original purpose was scattered by the motives of the unscrupulous commentators, there arose the need to re-establish the disciplic succession. 5,000 years ago, it was detected by the Lord himself that the disciplic succession was broken, and therefore he declared that the purpose of the Gita appeared to be lost. In the same way, at the present moment also, there are so many editions of the Gita, especially in English, but almost all of them are not according to authorized disciplic succession. There are innumerable interpretations rendered by different mundane scholars, but almost all of them do not accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, although they make a good business on the words of Sri Krishna. This spirit is demonic, because demons do not believe in God, but simply enjoy the property of the Supreme. Since there is a great need for an edition of the Gita in English, as it is received by the Parampara, or the disciplic succession system, an attempt is made herewith to fulfill this great want. The Bhagavad Gita, accepted as it is a great boon to humanity. But if it is accepted as a treatise of philosophical speculations, it is simply a waste of time. So, very important instruction. Prabhupada is here fulfilling Krishna's desire here, that the Gita be given as it is by the proper person and in the proper context. Why was it broken? By the force of time. Just like, well, because you know, someone will get hold of it. It's a perfect example as today, because it's a very well-known book. It's a very interesting book. But we can, you know, so why don't we give a nice explanation of translation of it?
But you see that the pralaya happened after certain yuga, the pralaya happened, and then again the Prithvi, the Mother Earth comes back, and then is that because
I don't think it's he's talking about pralaya here. He's talking, you know, he's talking about just, you know, Satya, Treta, Dwapara, Kali. But as you get down even into Dwapara Yuga,
it was there from Treta.
well, you know, of course, Krishna, I mean, he spoke at the end of Dwapara Yuga. Here, he's speaking at the end of Dwapara Yuga. So, you know, I mean, but there were great devotees in the Satya Yuga and Treta Yuga, but they didn't have the Bhagavad Gita, but they had...
But it says that it was there. They said it is broken.
He spoke it. He spoke it, earlier on. So...
But in course of the time,
in course of time, the message is distorted. In other words, it's not passed on purely, and then the message is fuzzed up, and therefore Krishna has to come and reinstitute it as it is and come again.
thank you.
Yeah. So I mean, we should really for a moment contemplate our great fortune here, because it's a mere 5,000 years, you know. Okay. Well, I mean, not, you know, we're fortunate. I mean, I read a Bhagavad Gita, and some of you may have not. I mean, but back in the 60s, Bhagavad Gita was popular, you know, yoga. But there was a Bhagavad Gita with no purport, no Sanskrit, just the, you know, 800 translations. It was a little thin paperback, Penguin edition. And I read through it, and it didn't really... You know, I didn't know what to make of it, pretty much, but it wasn't giving me an instruction of what to do, you know, to realize the knowledge. So it really didn't help me that much. But of course, you know, when you come into Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, he's explaining, and there's so much, what is it called now? Normative means to take it, to change your behavior. In other words, there's something to do. Famously, one of Tamal Krishna Maharaj says he's probably on the bus with Vishnudan. They went to different universities, you know, and they would have a big kirtan, but also they would meet the professors if there was someone willing to talk to them. So Tamal got to talk to some religious course teacher, you know, and he asked him, well, have you read the Bhagavad Gita? And he said, of course I've read the Bhagavad Gita. So then Tamal said, well, what are you going to do? He said, well, what are you going to do? I mean, what do you mean, what am I going to do? I'm just, you know, he didn't even understand that there's an imperative here. You know, there's something that's meant to change your life, not simply to put up on the shelf and teach a course on it. So that was the typical, you know, that they don't even know it. They may know some Sanskrit and whatever, you know, but if it's not received in the right mood, then it becomes a desecration, because they use it to make money, you know.
That's why, because of this reason, His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada has given a title for this book as a Bhagavad Gita.
As it is, exactly. Okay. Go ahead.
Can you just, you talk a little bit more about the mind state that we should have when we chant, and where our heart should be and where our mind should be when we chant? Can you elaborate on that a little more?
If you like. As you know, as I've been bringing up lately, Prabhupada mentioned that this chanting is actually a prayer. We're calling, I mean, just grammatically, everything is in the vocative form. There's different, Sanskrit is an inflected language, means that when you're saying, addressing someone, then it's in a certain form. Like Hare is the vocative form of Hara. Hara means the goddess of fortune, basically. And if you're going to say, "Oh, goddess of fortune," you don't say Hara, you say Hare. You see. And the other words, I think Kṛṣṇa, of course, can be vocative, but it can be other form, but it's the same. And Rama is the same thing. So these are the whole mantra. You're calling out. It's a calling out. And well, what are you calling out for? So Prabhupada explained, many times, you're calling out to Krishna to please, save me by engaging me in your service. Now it's interesting that the way Lord Chaitanya taught, he was that the very act of joining in the kirtan and walking, out in the street, and that you're in his service. You're giving the Hare Krishna mantra to others. That's why I always noticed from the very beginning, because we would go out, as I've been explaining, 3 hours a day on Harinam. When I first joined, but there will also be, of course, 16 rounds with chanting in the morning. So I found the kirtan outside, because it also involves dancing, and relation to others, had a greater, it was more intense for me. For the chanting, first of all, there were about 100 of us in the temple, and we were all. It seemed like 100, but we're all chanting in the temple room. Here, if we have 5 people chanting in the temple room, I don't know if you've seen it that's a lot. In other words, you could pretty well hear even if, But in those days, sometimes I would leave the temple room and try to go to the place where we were storing all of the rice bags and everything, because I could be alone, Get in trouble for that. But the point is that whether it's chanting japa, or on the street, chanting together, or in the temple chanting kirtan, sankirtan. The first thing is to really concentrate, to hear the sound, both when you're chanting it and when you're hearing it. And that's the first thing. And that was explained because there's 10 offenses. You heard about the 10 offenses, right? Oh no, you haven't been here when we say the 10 offenses. Every morning we say that. If you read the Nectar of Devotion, it's very important. You take that on the plane with you and make a study of it. Just read it through. You probably read the whole thing going out trip to India. But there's a list of the 10 offenses. They also appear in a purport in the Madhya Lila, I think, Adi Lila. So, the first offense is to blaspheme the devotees who've dedicated their lives, and there's 10 of them. I won't go into it, but one of them is to be inattentive while chanting. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur said that's the root of all the other offenses. Because if you're really attentive while chanting, you're going to start to taste the spiritual pleasure. You're going to want to hear more and more. Because the name, I'll give you one beautiful verse. Okay. Jayati Jayati Namananda Rupam Murari. It's the first line of a verse by Sanatana Goswami. Just glorifying the name of Krishna. The name Krishna. All glories are glories to the name Krishna, which is Ananda Rupam, the very form of bliss. The name of Murari. Murari is the enemy of Muradim. It's another name for Krishna. And then he goes on to glorify in such a way, and just you're in awe to hear of how he's appreciating the holy name. It's inspiring, So the point is, the holy name is absolute. The more you pay attention, the more sincerely you chant, and the better carefully you hear, the more you'll get the potency will act on you. Krishna will act and will attract you to him, and you'll be experiencing a level of spiritual pleasure, which will liberate you from material entanglement. Anyway, this class is too short. It's only 1 hour, and we're coming upon the end of the hour. So we have 1 minute. I'll give you one nice little verse about the holy name. Okay, so this is from the Kevalashtaka. Have you heard the Kevalashtaka? Yes. And this is the one I always, when I recited, I said, this is the one that's my favorite. Nikshvasena hi vishvaso kodarudho bhavishyati kirtane matabaryad hare namaiva kevalam. Remember that our final breath may come at any time, no matter if we're old and sick or in our youthful prime. So young and old alike should chant today incessantly the holy name of Shri Hari Yeshua all that be. So you're very fortunate to be in your prime, but you can also chant incessantly. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.